Unveiling the Cross and the Crown, Christianity's pivotal role in colonialism. What if the spread of a religion was as much about power and conquest as it was about faith? Welcome to the sands of history, where we unearth the intricate ties between Christianity and colonialism, a saga that shaped empires and cultures across the globe. In this exploration, we'll dive into how Christianity served as both a spiritual guide and a tool of domination, leaving an indelible mark on history. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join us on this journey through time, and check the description for links to help us financially as we continue to uncover the past. The dawn of Christianity and colonial ambitions. Christianity, born in the 1st century in the Roman province of Judea, spread rapidly across Europe, becoming the dominant religion by the 4th century under Emperor Constantine. By the time the Age of Exploration began in the 15th century, Christianity was deeply entrenched in European societies, shaping their worldview, politics, and ambitions. The Catholic Church, in particular, wielded immense power, influencing monarchs and mobilizing resources for ventures abroad. As European powers like Spain, Portugal, France, and England set sail to discover new lands, Christianity became a driving force behind their colonial pursuits. The Church provided moral justification for conquest, framing it as a divine mission to spread the gospel to heathen lands. This fusion of faith and imperialism laid the groundwork for centuries of colonization, where the cross often preceded the crown. The theological justification: salvation or subjugation. The concept of the civilizing mission was central to Christianity's role in colonialism. European powers believed they had a divine mandate to convert non-Christians, whom they often viewed as savages or pagans. The 1493 papal bull Inter Caetera, issued by Pope Alexander VI, granted Spain and Portugal the right to colonize and convert indigenous peoples in the Americas and Africa. This doctrine, rooted in the Church's authority, gave colonizers a moral veneer for their actions, cloaking exploitation in the guise of salvation. Missionaries were often the first Europeans to arrive in new territories, establishing contact with indigenous populations. They learned local languages, translated scriptures, and built churches, schools, and hospitals. While these efforts sometimes provided education and healthcare, they also disrupted indigenous cultures, imposing European values and eroding traditional practices. For example, in the Americas, Spanish missionaries like the Franciscans and Jesuits worked to convert Native Americans, often forcibly, while destroying sacred sites and banning rituals deemed pagan. In Africa, missionaries played a dual role. They preached salvation, but also paved the way for colonial governance by mapping territories, gathering intelligence, and weakening local resistance. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, which formalized the scramble for Africa, was underpinned by the notion that Christianizing the continent would civilize it, aligning spiritual goals with colonial exploitation. Christianity as a tool of control. Christianity wasn't just a spiritual force, it was a mechanism of control. Colonial powers used religion to legitimize their rule and pacify indigenous populations. In the Spanish colonies, the encomienda system granted settlers land and labor in exchange for Christianizing the natives. This often led to brutal exploitation, as conversion became a pretext for enslavement and resource extraction. In the British Empire, Christianity reinforced hierarchies. In India, for instance, missionaries targeted lower castes, offering education and social mobility in exchange for conversion. While this provided some opportunities, it also created divisions within communities, weakening resistance to British rule. Similarly, in Australia, missions aimed to civilize Aboriginal peoples, often separating children from their families in what became known as the Stolen Generations, a policy justified by Christian notions of salvation. The Church also played a role in justifying slavery. In the Americas, Catholic and Protestant clergy cited biblical passages to defend the enslavement of Africans, arguing that it was part of God's plan to bring them to Christianity. The transatlantic slave trade saw millions forcibly converted. their African spiritual practices suppressed in favor of a Christianity that upheld the colonial order. Cultural erasure and resistance. The imposition of Christianity often meant the erasure of indigenous cultures. In Mesoamerica, the Spanish destroyed Aztec and Maya codices, replacing them with Christian texts. In Africa, traditional religions were demonized and converts were pressured to abandon ancestral practices. This cultural destruction was not merely a byproduct of colonialism, but a deliberate strategy to consolidate power. However, indigenous peoples were not passive recipients of Christianity. Many resisted, either by rejecting conversion outright or by blending Christian practices with their own traditions, creating syncretic religions. In Latin America, for example, Catholicism merged with indigenous beliefs, resulting in practices like the veneration of the Virgin of Guadalupe, which combined Catholic iconography with Aztec reverence for the divine feminine. In Africa, independent Christian churches emerged, such as the Kimbanguist Church in the Congo, which adapted Christian teachings to local contexts, challenging colonial authority. Economic dimensions. The Church, as a colonial enterprise, the Church itself was a major economic player in colonialism. In the Americas, Catholic orders like the Jesuits amassed vast wealth through land ownership, agriculture, and mining. Their missions, while ostensibly spiritual, functioned as economic hubs, producing goods for export and integrating indigenous labor into colonial economies. In the Philippines, the Spanish Church controlled large estates, or haciendas, which generated revenue while enforcing Christian conformity. Protestant churches also profited. In the British and Dutch colonies, missionary societies often worked alongside trading companies like the British East India Company or the Dutch East India Company, VOC. These partnerships ensured that religious and commercial interests were intertwined, with missionaries facilitating access to resources and markets. The Protestant wave and colonial expansion. While Catholicism dominated early colonialism, Protestantism played a significant role in later centuries, particularly in British and Dutch colonies. The Protestant work ethic, emphasizing discipline and productivity, aligned with the capitalist ambitions of these empires. In North America, Puritan settlers viewed their colonies as a city upon a hill, a model of Christian virtue meant to inspire the world. This ideology justified the displacement of Native Americans and the establishment of settler colonies. The Protestant wave and colonial expansion. While Catholicism dominated early colonialism, Protestantism played a significant role in later centuries, particularly in British and Dutch colonies. The Protestant work ethic, emphasizing discipline and productivity, aligned with the capitalist ambitions of these empires. In North America, Puritan settlers viewed their colonies as a city upon a hill, a model of Christian virtue meant to inspire the world. This ideology justified the displacement of Native Americans and the establishment of settler colonies. In Africa and Asia, Protestant missionaries focused on education and social reform, often clashing with colonial administrations over issues like slavery. For example, British missionaries like David Livingstone advocated for the abolition of the slave trade, while promoting commerce and Christianity as alternatives. However, their efforts often reinforced colonial structures, as education systems trained locals to serve in colonial bureaucracies. The legacy of Christianity in colonialism. The impact of Christianity on colonialism is a complex tapestry of faith, power, and resistance. On one hand, it provided a moral framework that justified conquest and exploitation, enabling European powers to expand their empires under the banner of divine providence. On the other, it offered tools for education, social mobility, and resistance, as indigenous peoples adapted Christian teachings to their own ends. The legacy of this era persists today. In many former colonies, Christianity remains a dominant religion, shaping cultural and political landscapes. However, the scars of cultural erasure and exploitation endure, as do debates over the Church's role in colonialism. Some view missionaries as agents of progress, bringing education and healthcare. Others see them as complicit in cultural genocide. In post-colonial societies, the Church has had to reckon with its past. In recent years, institutions like the Catholic Church have issued apologies for their role in colonialism and the mistreatment of indigenous peoples, such as the 2022 apology by Pope Francis to Canada's First Nations for the abuses in residential schools. These gestures, while significant, cannot undo centuries of impact, but they signal a growing awareness of Christianity's complex legacy. Christianity's global footprint. By the end of the colonial era, Christianity had become a global religion, with millions of adherents in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. This expansion was not merely spiritual, but a cornerstone of European dominance, reshaping societies in profound ways. The spread of Christianity facilitated the integration of colonies into global economic systems, while its institutions, churches, schools, and missions became enduring fixtures of post-colonial societies. Conclusion: a legacy of faith and power. As we sift through the sands of history, the role of Christianity in colonialism reveals a story of duality: faith intertwined with conquest, salvation entangled with subjugation. Its influence shaped empires, transformed cultures, and left a legacy that continues to spark debate. Join us again as we uncover more chapters of the past, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay part of this journey. Check the description for links to help us financially, supporting our mission to bring history to life. Thank you for exploring with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep digging into the sands of history.